Welcome to Not So PG. I'm Brooke Blurton. My pronouns are she and her.
I'm Matty Mills. My pronouns are he and him. And before we get started, we'd like to acknowledge the custodians of the land on which we record. And for both of us, it's the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, because Brooke and I are both in Sydney on beautiful Gadigal country. Isn't it a beautiful day today?
It's stunning.
Like,
I know. I love coming to Gadigal.
yeah, its place is very welcoming.
It is.
How are you?
Good.
You good?
Should we get into, should we go into it?
Yes, let's get into it.
So last week we talked about Gaza, and now we're here in Gadigal.
Yes.
Now, we discussed that there were some parallels to what is happening in the world, but it had me definitely reflecting on a few things.
Yeah.
Just about, I guess, the content, the videos that I'm seeing, you know, there's children, it's devastating, and how, I don't know, I kind of just got a bit of a reality check to how lucky I feel to be not in that position.
Yeah.
I know that sounds like so devastating, but it's like, God.
You know what? I think that I had a similar experience. I was seeing young boys in particular around the age of 5 to 7, and they were documenting their experience of what was happening in Gaza and what they'd seen and what they'd heard and the devastation that they were experiencing, especially when it comes to their families being killed. And like, I was looking at these little boys and I was thinking to myself, like, they looked like me when I was little. Like, I could see myself in those kids. And it was so scary to think that, like, as a young kid, the things that you go through and the things that you experience, how much that affects you long term, and how much, like, even the things that we went through as kids that we've spoken about and how our lives have paralleled with a lot of experiences, that how much trauma some of those experiences hold for you as an adult and how they don't go. I've been recently reflecting on, like, my childhood and doing a lot of work within therapy, which is an episode that we're going to talk about coming up, therapy. I really want to touch on therapy. But I have been reflecting on my childhood and thinking about, like, how much happened between the ages of particularly, like, 5 and 12.
Yeah, wow.
And
they're very, very, very vital years.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I know that the younger years are hugely influential on who you are as a human being, and it shapes you, like, massively. Yeah. But I was reflecting on some of the influences that people have had on me and my life. And I had this moment this week where I caught up with one of those influences and was able to sort of go back in time and talk through the things that happened between the ages of particularly, like, just pre-teens, you know, and talk about the type of person I was at that age and about the type of dreams and ambition and ideas that I had for the world and how inquisitive I was. And I was like,
can you take us back? I mean, whilst we're there, like, we might as well do a deep dive. Yeah. I mean, what was little Maddie like?
Oh my gosh, this is, like, so exciting for me to talk about because I'm on a journey to, like, get that kid back. Yeah. And what I mean by that is
Amen to that. Yeah. Your inner child, like, is obviously healing, but get that inner child back. I live for that.
I'm really excited to be able to be in touch with that younger version of myself. Yeah. And the reason I am is because I felt like he was really wise beyond his years, and also the things that he wanted in the world and the things that, like, he dreamt of and how curious he was, and also, like, he had a really strong line of what was right and wrong. You know,
you always knew that?
I always knew that. And I think.
And who do you think instilled that in you? Was it just that something that came? Was it an instinct?
Experiences. Yeah. But I would say that once I was around 10 years old, there was a really important person who came into my life, and she was the person who I caught up with, and her name's Pip. And I just don't know where I would be without her. She's one of those people who I think about, like, how much influence she's had and how much genuine care she's had for me since I was a young kid. And
who is she in your life?
So she's a Christian lady who sort of was a Sunday school teacher
Yeah.
But her profession was she was an early intervention teacher who worked with children who had, I was going to say Alzheimer's, but it's not. It's children with Alzheimer's. I don't think it's a thing.
Autism.
It's autism.
I'm actually being tested for autism. Did you know that?
Oh, I didn't.
Sorry, yeah. Side note.
But so she worked with kids who had autism and who were on the spectrum. And she had this profound ability to be able to connect with young people. And she didn't have kids of her own, right? And so she didn't just like do Sunday school. She got me like, for instance, my first job, which was mowing lawns.
Oh my God.
And like she
Slay.
would slay, like so mask. She would take me around on the
I
week.
can imagine you though.
I would literally go and knock on.
Shirtless with the shirt tucked out the back of his bum, pushing the mower that would go back
You
and
know
forth.
it. You know it. And sometimes I wasn't even strong enough to push that mower because I was a little kid, mind you. But you know
just
what
think
I
you
did
could
on
do it.
Saturdays? I mowed lawns for the people who went to the church. So I would ask them if they need their lawns mowed, and I'd get $10 or $15 for a lawn, and then I would go and wash their cars. So I would mow the lawn.
So
and wash their
entrepreneur as
cars.
well.
I was an
He's a
entrepreneur.
businessman.
And this was at the age, I'm saying like around 11 was when I started to do these like one-off jobs. And I was like a little businessman. And I would walk sometimes to the people's homes, which was so far from my house, to wash their cars for $15. I mean, that was a lot of money back, you know, 15 years ago. Like,
Yeah.
that was some good money for a young kid. But I just remember having, I just remember, especially last week when I caught up with Pip, just remembering how much of an impact she had on my life. And I truly believe that it just takes one person to believe in you as a kid for you to be able to change your life or change the trajectory of your life. And I know that I've shared a lot of my experiences over the years and like shared a lot of the struggles and the challenges I've had through my childhood. But I want to make it clear that like I didn't do it alone, you know?
Yeah, you had other
I
people.
had these amazing people who believed in me and saw something in me and saw my like my fight and my like get up and go nature that like they invested in me, you know, whether it was time, money,
Or love.
education, love. And she was just somebody who I remember just meeting her and I was annoying because I would message her all the time and ask her to like, you know, help me with things. And all I wanted to do was be around her a lot of the time too. You know, when you're a kid and you just want to be around someone who feels safe.
Yeah, exactly.
And I really felt that way about her. She felt like a safe place for me.
yeah.
And if I didn't meet her, I don't think I would be where I'm at because she really changed my life when she explained the world to me as a big concept.
Yeah.
Like she told me that my world could be so much bigger than the circumstances of my four walls, you know, or
Yeah.
the level of I suppose, you know, struggle that, you know, I was living in as a
Yeah.
kid.
Yeah. She showed you what a life outside of what that was.
Yeah.
I think, you know, being like even full circle for me,
Mm-hmm.
being someone that I can be like Pip to other
Yeah.
kids
Yes.
is definitely what my calling has always been.
Yeah.
And I just admire, you know, people like Pip that can come into someone's life and just completely, you know,
Yeah.
change and have that positive, have such a positive effect on someone.
Yeah.
I've had similar people.
Yeah.
And I talk about this obviously a lot in Big Love,
Yes.
my memoir.
Yeah.
And there was quite a few people that came in and showed me that sort of unconditional love, but also that unconditional care and safety that you talk about. And I
Yeah.
think safety is a really important thing because we were born into a beautiful culture and community. But unfortunately in our circumstance, and I say ours as, you know, I think both of us have similarities, obviously,
Yeah.
that sometimes those environments weren't safe for
No.
a young kid.
They weren't.
And we both have admitted, but I think, you know, we've now being on the, you know, the other side of living in poverty and, you know, being around maybe substance abuse, you can understand why an important role model or figure is so important for a kid.
Yes.
Yeah. So I had my Pip.
Yes.
So my person to your Pip is there's a few people.
Yeah.
So even in child removal is still happening today. Unfortunately, we talk about the stolen generation, and people think that it happened years ago, but it wasn't that long ago, and it's actually still happening.
Yeah.
And I was actually removed and from school. So my brother and I were removed from school. Our mother wasn't notified, and basically then my as soon as they could get a hold of my baby brother, who was 3, with my mum, all of us were housed into a foster home.
Yep.
And our foster parents were both white and Christian, and they were equally beautiful. So similar story where we were taken to Sunday school, and I love Sunday school. Like, I love being fed.
Love it? I loved it for the food, but I also loved it because it gave me something to look forward to. It was like there was this light at the end of the tunnel at the end of the week that was like, yes, on Sunday I'm going to get picked up on this bus. I'm going to go to school. I'm going to have this like weird little sermon that I don't really listen to, but then I'm going to get to run around with my friends. I'm going to eat food. And I'm going to talk to all the adults because I really like talking to adults.
That's
as a kid.
The same feelings that I had, which is so so strange that we both had that same experience in sort of led us up to this moment, I guess. Yeah. And I didn't love the religion aspect, and I was open to telling. So these people were called Ken and Barb. So Ken as in Kenneth and Barb as in Barbara. And I
Barbie
talk
and
about
Ken.
them.
Oh my God, Barbie and Ken. That is so funny.
I know. But they were just such beautiful role models for me. And again, you look forward to that Sunday because of all these things. And I think it was the outing. It was like jumping in the car and going to somewhere. And I loved singing. I loved singing the hymns.
The hymns, yes.
For church. But I didn't understand sometimes the meaning of what they were saying,
Did you have to put your hand up?
I was like,
Doing these ones?
oh Lord Jesus, save my soul, whatever. But
yeah,
but it was just the singing community aspect that I loved really. Because we know that, Christianity can be quite damaging to queer people and has been really damaging to First Nations people.
When it comes to the missionaries,
Yeah, exactly. So there is that sort of, would you call it a juxtaposition of it all?
Well, I think that there's parts of that experience at Sunday school as a kid that you crave within your normal life. It's structure, it's routine, it feels like community.
Yes.
And it's like a safe place because... my experience was a safe place at the Sunday school, but some haven't been in the past, especially when it comes to the Catholic Church, but we won't go there.
We'll touch on that another day.
But I think
these influences, gave, even if they weren't even intentionally trying to do that, they did.
Yeah.
I also had a couple more people that were huge influences in my life. So, and to just name a few, but I was a pretty independent kid. I mean, little Brookie was quite similar to Maddie. I wasn't maybe as outgoing.
Yeah.
I was probably a little bit more reserved, a bit quiet, a bit shy. And I didn't really kind of openly talk or speak out until I was well into high school. So as a little kid, I was very... I was loud when I played my friends, but as a kid as a whole, my family would probably describe me as very quiet.
Yeah.
Which is so weird now. It's so weird to think that I get paid to talk, really.
I mean, it's weird to think of you. I mean, I actually know the quiet side of you, though, now that I think of it. I think I know the more reserved side of you, especially when it comes to, I think work is, you have to give energy at work. You have to
wear many hats.
You have to. It's like code switching. It's like
it is, yeah. And I think
I have to be that sort of vibrant person within front of the cameras, but
exactly
at home, I feel like you're very chill.
I am. I mean, I think I'm quite introverted in some degree, and I think I've always been like that. I enjoy my own time and space.
Yes.
And I think as a kid I did that. I had my particular routines, and I did things even in foster, but even at home, I created structure and I created routine for myself.
Yeah.
Like I would get up and I was like a cleaner, you know,
Yeah.
and I enjoyed that. That was my like, even though I didn't know it at the time, but that was my meditation. That was
Yeah.
my things that brought me joy, is being in a clean house or making a bed. It's so weird to think, but like I'm still like that to this day.
Yeah.
Like I still take a lot of pride in that as
Yeah.
little Brookie. And I think it has had, the influences have had that effect on me as well.
Yeah.
Because, when you have a world of chaos, you create your own little sanctuary, you
Yeah.
create your own little calm.
Yeah.
So I had Ken and Barb, and I'm sure you've had many as well. And I've had this beautiful woman called Joanne, short for Joe. Sorry, Joe for short.
Yeah.
And she was a school teacher, but she was a Follow the Dream coordinator, which is an Aboriginal and
Okay.
Torres Strait Islander tutoring program for
nice.
high achieving. At the time it was called high achieving, but now it's obviously just open. They, mostly it was for high attendance kids, who were coming to school.
Yes.
But now the program's open to just all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander kids. So I was attending this program and she was the coordinator, and eventually I actually, moved out of home and became homeless, but I lived with her in year 11 and 12. And throughout, knowing her as a coordinator / teacher, Joe showed me this unconditional and ruthless love that I
Yeah.
will never take for granted, because I think for me, I needed someone who just told me how it was.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you have that person too,
Yeah.
where they're loving and they're kind in a way that's like, it's hard love,
Yeah.
but it's like unconditional, and you know that it's there, and you know that they'll do anything for you, but they make you work for it in some way, in a way that's like,
Yeah.
necessary for you to push yourself.
So Joe was your teacher,
Joe was my teacher.
and that might sound a little bit odd for people who are listening for the fact that you were living with your teacher. Like,
Yes.
how does that come about? Like, is it one day that you're at school and they hear of your circumstance and they take you in, or is it just over like building a relationship and it came organically?
It was actually quite a process, and I think that's very, controversial in a student living with a teacher, because
Yeah.
I think, the boundaries of that and professionalism. But because Joe was a coordinator, there was a little bit of, she looked after mostly the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander kids. What happened in the short version, you can go read it actually, because I did write about it.
Yeah.
But the short version is I was a very high attendance kid. I loved school. In high school, I was weird.
Yeah.
Like I was one of those kids that enjoyed school.
Yeah.
Not only because of the learning, but also as a safety net too.
Yeah.
As a safety place, as we talked to. But so what happened was I was having a really tough time at home with my stepmom and my dad. Basically, my stepmom kicked me out of home, and my dad and her were separated, so they were living separately, and my dad was living out of a caravan.
Yep.
So I went and lived with my dad in a caravan, and I was just so embarrassed as a kid, like being like, and I've lived in a caravan before. My mum and I, when I was like 9,
Yeah.
we lived in Coral Bay for about 6 months. I was homeschooled.
Yep.
Homeschooled. I didn't go to school.
Yeah.
But being like 15, 16, and like having to live with my dad in a caravan just felt like so, I just felt not just embarrassed, but I was like, oh my God, like I'm a deadbeat. Like I'm not going to make anything from my
And
life.
as a kid, those moments feel so heavy.
It does.
Like, and you feel the shame of like talking about where you live can be really hard. I remember moments
I
where
never
you,
invited my friends.
That's
Then
exactly
I would
right.
get picked up
Yeah.
down the road at a house.
Yeah,
Like I
and
would walk
pretend
down.
it's the house.
Yeah.
I've done that too.
Yeah. I think the moment where it was really hard for me, and I definitely speak to this, was a memory that I had showering in the shower complex at the caravan park and
Yeah.
having like forgotten my towel and having to put like dirty clothes on, like dry myself with the clothes that I wore and just like free ball it and then head back. I don't know. It was just like a whole thing as a 16-year-old. And then, listening to my phone in the shower and that Aeroplane by
Airplanes
B.O.B.
in the
was
sky.
playing.
Yes. That was such a classic song. Like,
Yeah,
that
and
was
I
on
think being
repeat.
16, I was like, oh my God, what is my life?
Yeah.
Anyways, this was supposed to be a short story, but I'd been saving some money, or I put away money, and I was working at school as well. I had like 3 jobs and
Yep.
working at school. And I had put some money away and basically it had disappeared. And I, got into an argument with my dad, and basically he kicked me out because I was like really quite ruthless with my words, but absolutely fair. Like, you don't steal from your children. And so then I was homeless and I was living at my best friend's house and stopped going to school. And so Jo had picked up that I hadn't been attending, and so she's sort of done the rounds like, okay, like, where is Brooke?
Yeah.
For her to do that means that she cares.
Yeah.
And that is the smallest thing that could change like someone's trajectory of life, is
Yeah.
for someone just to care.
Totally.
So she came looking for me,
Yep.
and everyone was like, oh yeah, I think she's at so-and-so's house. I think she's at so-and-so's house. And then eventually she rocked up in so-and-so's house and she was like, what are you doing? So
Wow.
she was like,
went looking for you.
are we going to school or what? Like, what are we doing? Like, basically gave me the word, and I was like, wow, like, this woman is like, one, she cares to rock up. She's found me. 2, like, I'm embarrassed. I told her, I was like, I don't have anywhere to go. I was living out of a bag.
Yeah.
And basically she was like, I don't care. Like, you're coming to live with me.
Wow.
Now, to get that signed off was obviously a bit of a process. I had to then, basically live independently through the system. So apply for Centrelink, basically to live as under, an independent minor, basically. And my stepmom had to sign off on it.
Okay.
But she was fine. She was like, you know what? Off my hands. I have a good relationship with my stepmom. She also changed my life. So I have to actually, say that up until the time that she kicked me out, we were pretty good. She fed me and looked after me.
Yeah.
Love her.
Yeah.
But yeah, so basically at the 11 and 12, I lived with Jo, and my principal had to sign off on it as well. Like, everyone in the school and my peers all knew what was happening, and all were all really supportive
Very
of it.
transparent.
Yeah. So there was nothing like, oh, she's like fucking her teacher or something, like immature shit.
That would be fucked up.
So yeah, but Jo changed my life. But I
Yeah.
had my driving instructor who was an absolute sweetheart, who his wife even came and visited me when I was sick in hospital once. Just like really fucking good people.
Yeah. I know that, like for me, I had Pip, but then Pip was somebody who was like the pillar of my life from the moment I met her. Like, she was so consistent, and consistency is something that I never experienced, even in the care system. Like, when we first got moved to foster care, when we were taken from my mum, we got put with this lady called, actually I won't say her name, but she was a lady who was based on the Central Coast. And when you were talking about the caravan situation, it reminded me of her, because she was supposed to be that first sort of breath of fresh air when it comes to consistency and like a solid person in our lives to take care of us. And she wasn't. She was the absolute opposite. So behind closed doors, she was erratic, she was a mess, and like her life wasn't great. But to the care system, she put on this front. And so us 3 boys got put with her, and she had a boyfriend in a caravan park. And so what she used to do, she used to make us get the bus from school and get it to the caravan park, and we would have to wait outside his caravan while they like did everything they did, which was like everything under the sun. And then when the sun would go down, she'd come out and she would give us like $5 to walk across the road to get like a pie at the service station for dinner. And then we'd walk back and they'd still be going at it. And then... yeah, it's fucked up. And then we'd drive home, and it was like most days after school, that was like our afternoon. Would be waiting outside a caravan park for her and her partner, who was also abusive. Like, he hit my brother multiple times, my older brother. Like, just waiting on her. And she was supposed to be that person who was supposed to be the stable, good influence on our life, who was supposed to take us on, and she just didn't. Anyway, I dobbed on her to the neighbour, and we got split up from that moment. So it was like I dobbed on her to the neighbour told the agency, and then us three boys had to get split up. And as a kid, you blame yourself. You're like, oh, if I didn't say anything, we'd still be together. And it was
you do, because you don't know
you don't know
better. Yeah.
And so, and she tried to drill that into me as well.
Yeah.
Well, you boys are going to get split up now and blah, blah, blah. And it turned out for the better because we did get split up, but we were all sort of close to each other.
Yeah.
But we had some good foster carers too, like Robin and Bob, who
Robin and Bob.
Yeah.
Ken and Bob and Robin and Bob.
You know what happened? When I was doing my tours on top of the Harbour Bridge when I used to do the Byrowa tour, and she must have been watching the TV, and she saw me on Sunrise doing this tour, and she must have did a dig on Facebook, and she found me on Facebook and sent me the loveliest message and was like, "Hi, it's Robin. I don't know if you remember me, but I took you on when you were a young kid, and I'm not with Bob anymore. Bob split up." But she still had the foster kid that she adopted when we first moved there. And but Robin and Bob were great. Like, they were two really good influences. And one of the things that I remember, like, you remember little quirks from experiences. They had one night a week, which was called Grabs, and which meant that you could go to the pantry and grab whatever you wanted for dinner.
That's pretty cool.
Which is cool, right? And as a kid, you're like, oh my God, like.
What would you grab?
I would normally go for like noodles. And I know that's terrible, but like as a kid, you're like, oh my God, noodles. Yes, I want noodles for dinner, And so it would be noodles, or it would be like, I would grab like noodles and then have like snacks, like biscuits and stuff.
Yeah,
but you're allowed to grab anything you wanted.
Yeah.
So, and I remember, I don't know if this was your experience in foster care, but like how much food played a part in like your happiness?
So I talk about this a lot. I know I've mentioned the book already, but like it always just, writing your timeline of your events and then publishing it is just crazy to think. But it just really unpacked a lot about my childhood. And I think food, like majority of the comments and the, messages I've got from people is how they just wanted to feed me in the book.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's really sweet. Like, I think that's like... And I was like, well, I don't feel like I was starving. But when I reread the book, and I've read it 1,000 times.
Yeah.
But because you read it, you're so when you edit, it's just kind of like you kind of just associate.
Yes.
And then I think the common thread in the book was that I was starving all the time.
Yeah. Which
has really affected me in my adult life. And I don't have an eating disorder by any means.
Yeah.
Living in poverty, I didn't realise was disordered eating, so it affected me throughout my life a little bit at different points. So, but I don't, like I said, by any means have an eating disorder. I actually have a really good relationship with food. Yeah. But when I was younger, I just had no choice of not eating.
Yeah.
And that, is such a like... To think that I have now like the privilege of eating is crazy. Like,
I know, it's crazy.
Buying whatever I want to buy.
I just remember like from in foster care, that was the main thing that I loved, is that we had food.
Yeah.
Like,
this is what I talk to the girls about, is to nourish your body as much as you can in this time. So nourish your brain and your physical health and your mental health at this time, because this is where you're going to absorb so much information. Like right now, they're like sponges and they need to. And like that's what we were when we were younger. We're trying to absorb as much stability, security, information, attention at sometimes. Like I think we, as kids, like we just want to absorb that much. And we want it to mostly be positive. But I think personally, I would never change any of my experiences when I was younger, like even the really shit ones, because it's really made me for who I am. Like, you know what I mean? Like, but the young girls that I work with, they have the luxury of getting, food through boarding and stuff like that. But it's crazy to think like things that I used to enjoy as well, they enjoy, like salty plums.
Oh, is salty plums a thing from where you are from?
Yeah.
See, a lot of my Darwin friends love them.
Darwin, Broome. Nah, but like even in Carnarvon, we
Really
loved them. There was this little
What's good about it?
Asian
Because
grocery
it doesn't
store that
sound like it sounds revolting.
I think it's like the salty sweet part of it. And
I've never had one in my life because I'm too scared to even put my taste buds through it.
Really? Yeah. Oh, I think you would like it. But it's
Really?
it's quite like a tedious thing to eat.
Yeah, it's chewy.
It's kind of like, so you got the pip and the seed and it's like the dried through, like around the seed. And
Yep.
basically, you know, you hold onto the seed and you eat all the flesh that's on it. But because it's sort of dyed, your fingers turn pink or red and your teeth and your lips.
Are they dyed?
Well, they're kind of like, well, they're salty plum. So I think the natural flavouring of the plum is there. But I think the colouring is maybe a bit
Oh.
artificial.
Yeah, like it's definitely one of those things that all my Darwin friends love. It's so interesting when we talk about influencers because for us, I think that we've had a lot of people come into our lives who have really
Shaped us,
shaped
yeah.
us, shaped us. And then you hear the word influencers these days and you're like,
Influencers or influencers?
influenzas.
No, that's the flu. But yeah, no, I feel like that's why I always sort of reframe that influencer word because I think people are like, oh, you're an influencer. I'm like, no, actually I'm a youth worker
Yeah.
who has, the ability to help influence young people.
Yeah. And
Positively.
Do you think that the influences that you had as a young person has made you want to move more towards social work? Because I know you've done social work like really nearly your whole adult life. You've sporadically done it, and it's obviously a huge part of your passion. But do you think when you reflect on the influences that were in your life, it has influenced you, the word influence, has influenced you to move towards social work and like get back there?
Yeah. Personally, I think, when we look at little Brookie and what she was passionate about and, what her interests were, I always had this passion for education. Like I talk about how I love school.
Yeah.
And I love my teachers. I was really personable, even though I was really shy.
Yeah.
I used to make my brothers play schools with me for hours,
Yeah.
and they were my students. And so I've always had this really undeniable, passion for education and learning and wanting to help other people live better quality of life, even if I wasn't in the best situation in my life.
Yeah.
So I've always had this drive for, I guess, sticking up for the little person and giving them the voice in a way of like wanting to do more and help people. So when I went, found my passion when I was working at a mental health service, that was kind of where I found my passion to working with young people. And it's something that I've noticed that just brings me so much joy and fulfillment.
Yeah.
But other jobs and other people and other experiences have sort of drawn me away from that.
Yeah.
So my experience with The Bachelor, The Bachelorette, TV, media, and I'm not saying that these have been negative impacts in my life. If anything, they've made me have, I've grown this platform to do more and be more.
Yeah.
But it's kind of taken me away from what my core driving purpose in life was and is. And it's to help young girls, like specifically, but young people all over in different cultures and different race and different experiences, just live a better quality of life. Like I think for me, I live in now like in such a privileged place that I'm able to give back, and I think I'll always continue to do that. Like I want children myself, but I'd be even happily to dedicate my whole life to helping young kids. Like, you know what I mean? So yeah, it has helped me. My experiences have definitely shaped me. The influences in my life have definitely made me want to do exactly what they did for me, pretty much. I think the full circle moment is pretty powerful,
Yeah.
right? To like think that once upon a time I was these kids. I always put myself back there.
Yeah, I think it's important to put yourself back there because yesterday I was having lunch with Jess and we were talking about friendships that came before the platforms and the jobs that we do now, and how those people who know you really know you, your day ones, even though you may not have spoken to them like
For
years, they still know you at your core before
Yeah.
all these other layers of the industry sort of were built on you.
I agree.
And
yeah.
like how cathartic it is to go back and have conversations with those people who you grew up with, who you formed yourself around. And she was saying that like she has friends from back in Darwin that have like that they really haven't connected in like maybe 18 years. And she's like, I really want to, like one of her goals recently has been to like reconnect with her friends from school. And be like, I want to unpack like what their lives have been like, and you know, and like get that sense of connection back. And I think that going back to those moments before like we got into this weird world of industry and like made industry friends, it's so important.
Yeah.
Like having and having the conversations of like what it was like to be a young person growing up.
Well, I feel like we started this episode with like the inner child situation of healing our inner child.
Yes.
And as much, you know, some of our experiences have been negative and quite impactful.
Yeah.
They've also shaped us to, you know what's right and wrong, which is what you opened with, right? You always knew what was right and you always knew what was wrong.
Yeah.
And I've always had that instinct as well, and always this big belief that community and culture and family were my core value. Like that was one of my values in life. And that will never change.
Yeah.
But over time, you know, you realize that some things that did happen in your life do affect you in your adult life.
Yes.
And, you know, as much as you've had these positive influences, they can only do so much as well. And you have to do the work too.
Yeah.
And a part of doing the work is healing your inner child and understanding, like, to, you know, I feel like we talk about intergenerational trauma in previous episodes, and that's an actual thing, right? That's passed down. That I don't want to have a child or have children that I'd be passing that generational trauma down to.
You're so spot on. Like, that is so important. Like, it's because we know what that's like to hold.
Yeah.
You know, and recently, as you know, like we've both been taking on therapy, and we're going to talk about this actually in the next episode. Like we're going to do a deep dive into therapy and how it's been helping us. But having to, you know, peel back all those layers of trauma has been extremely difficult. It's been a time of reflection, but
I have
it's also
to acknowledge
heavy.
opening that door is scary as well.
Scary. It is scary.
Yeah, which, you know, this is, you said in a couple of episodes ago that you were diving into therapy and it has been a journey for you, you know, throughout your life.
Yeah.
But to say at a point, you know, to say that this is what I'm going to do and I'm going to commit myself to it is actually a really scary step. And I think you've, you know, to hear you now talking about it.
Yeah, but it's like, also exciting. It's
Yeah.
scary, but it's exciting because the revelations that happen within those moments of like deep diving into who you are and peeling back like everything that you've sort of taken on over the years is super exciting because then you get to like realize or get to know yourself again. And I feel like I'm on that journey. But I think that, you know, we take on so many influences, whether it's who we were when we were younger and the people that shaped us as young people and those supportive people that you just know that you could pick up the phone and call and they'd be there, you know, or it's the influences that we, you know, that we take on through our work and the industry, which is like, for me, I think of the people who were there before and when we were younger as the people who are on the inside of the joke.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is because sometimes I see the fluff of the industry as like a bit of a joke and a bit of a facade, you know? It's like, it's work, but it's like the people who know you, people who know you are on the inside of the joke. And like, I love that feeling of being with them people and being with those those influencers from back in the day who truly know you. And I literally just went and caught up with Pip last week, had like a roast. She cooked me a roast, had like a deadly meal with her, and we just yarned about like what it was like back in the day and who she remembers me being. And for me, that was like healing. And it was like inspirational because I'm like, wow, yes, I want to get back to that little boy.
Oh my
Like
God.
that's a good little kid. Like he was a strong little kid.
Actually, that just also reminded me of something which I think is really valuable. An auntie reached out to me and she had found some beautiful photos, and I'd never seen these photos ever in my
'Cause
life.
you don't have any.
No.
Oh my gosh. So what age is the youngest before this moment that you've seen of yourself?
I've seen myself when I was like a baby.
Yeah.
And like a 1, 2.
Yeah.
And there's
But there's not a lot.
Yeah, there's not a lot of, and it's kind of sporadic.
Yeah.
You know, I don't have photos of my first day at school or my school photos.
Yes.
Like only in high school.
Yep.
But this photo, and this is what, you know, when you say to remember who's come before you, was so special because basically my sister, who's passed away, is holding me, and I am surrounded by mob. Like my brother's in it, my mum's in it. She's like wearing this like white bonnet in the back. My nan's in it. She's got this like Aboriginal band on. Like she looks so deadly.
Wow.
And Nan was like rocking the black, yellow, red like bands all the time. Like she looked like she was protesting, you know, like she was going to fight. Like but in this photo, you know, I'd never seen me with more than a group of 3 or 4 people.
Yeah.
And to have that photo just reminds me of what community that I come from. And for people to think as well at times like, oh, you're not black. I'll show you this photo and I'll prove to you that I'm black.
Don't those moments come at the most perfect time?
Yeah. And I think, that younger self, that little, you know, I'm in this like little pink set, I'll show you. It's just like crazy to think that's what I'm so used to. I'm so used to being surrounded by family. Like this is a part also that I'm missing from home, and the influence that home and community have on me is that I get this like not homesick feeling, but this like thing of I need to be around people. Like even though I'm introverted, I just need to be around the noise and chaos. Like I'll sleep through a house party like that, but as long as I'm amongst it and I'm there.
You know what? You've done it. You've slept through house parties as a kid.
Actually.
Oi, I'm the same. I'm the exact same. This is too funny.
All of my partners have been like, you sleep like a little mouse. There is so much noise going around and you're just like.
Yeah. I'm exactly the same.
Yeah.
The amount of fights I've slept through. The amount of like drunken moments of like my mum punching on with some fella. Like, and just being like, oh God. Like,
and you're just out.
You're just out.
Good night.
Or you're just sort of like waiting for it to end. You're like, okay, is it going to end soon? Yeah, they're going to, oh no, there they go.
Or did you ever, this is always so funny, did you ever fake that you were asleep so that you'd get carried?
Yes! From the lounge room to the bedroom? Yes.
And you'd be getting carried and you'd want to
wake up. Or from the car. Yes.
So it's so
like,
funny.
really?
Yeah. Even from when I was a baby, sorry, I'll wrap this up. But even when I was a baby, I had problems sleeping more when I was like a newborn and then into my toddler years. So mum used to drive me around the block and then I'd be like out, like good night, see ya. And so then as like a younger kid, I'd be like, take me for a drive at nighttime. So then my mum would take us around the block and I'd be like,
oh, you know what? There's something funny. We never had a car, so we walked everywhere. We were like ducklings behind my mum, and then when we moved with my dad, ducklings behind my dad. To the point where we had to walk to the shop for everything. And one day, we walk into the shop as little kids when we first moved to Dad's, and none of us boys wanted to carry the milk. We all walked up there for the milk. If one wanted milk, we all had to walk to the shop to get milk, which was like half an hour, like a long walk. So we walked up to IGA to get the milk. On the way back, Dad's like, someone needs to hold the milk. You boys wanted the milk? Somebody needs to fucking hold it. And he's still looking at us like this, and he's like, who's going to hold it? I'm like, nah, Dad, I'm tired, you know, like real like slack with your legs as a little kid. He goes, okay, you got 3 seconds. Who's going to hold it? And we're like, nah, He grabs the milk and he launches it into the air like 100 meters into the sky, and it
just-
comes down and it explodes in front of us. And he goes, "Well, no one's getting fucking Weet-Bix, are they?" We just
Oh my
walk
God.
home.
Yeah.
'Cause
And that was a teaching moment.
that was an influence. That was an influence.
If you don't carry milk,
Yeah.
no one's getting Weet-Bix.
I love it.
Literally.
But we need to talk more about our childhood in the next episode, because I
We
want to talk
do,
about the therapy side of things and about how important it has been to be able to go back to that little kid.
Yes.
But,
And also the work that you have to do to find a really good therapist.
Yes.
Maybe I could, include some really good tips that I've learned around.
would love that.
It's so funny that you brought up ducklings, because yesterday, we were working with the girls.
Yeah.
That's what I felt like when I
Oh,
was with
mother
the girls.
duck.
Like,
No,
and I'm the
following
same,
you.
height as these
Yeah.
girls, and they're sort of all leaning on me, but I feel like mother hen, and I've got all my little
I
ducklings,
love
and I'm just
that.
like waddling
what a
away.
great way to look at it.
But yeah, it's so funny.
Well, let's jump into therapy and our childhoods in the next episode. So make sure you mob tune in.
Yes.
But that's all we have time for today. Thank you so much for listening to Not So PG. If you love us, leave us a 5-star rating and a little review. We love those reviews.
And if you want to tell us something, follow us on socials and slide into the DMs. My handle is at brooke.blurton, and Maddie's handle is at It's Maddie Mills. And you can follow all of the Nova Podcast action over at Nova Podcast Official. All right,
Bye. Love this. Bye.